Croatia's euro adoption in 2023 wasn't economic progress. It wasn't European integration. It was a transfer of sovereignty. In January 2023, 3.8 million Croatians woke up to find their kuna replaced by the euro. The government called it an historic achievement. The European Central Bank promised greater stability and new horizons. 6 months later, coffee prices had jumped 50%, food costs surged 18%, and more than 240 businesses faced fines for unjustified price increases. This wasn't accidental inflation. The same pattern played out in Greece in 2001, in Portugal in 1999, in Slovenia in 2007. Small economies surrender their monetary sovereignty. Borrowing costs initially plummet. Then the trap closes. Here's what they don't tell you about currency unions. When you can't devalue your currency, you devalue your people instead. To understand Croatia's trap, we need to go back to 2001. Back to another small European nation that bet everything on the euro, Greece. On January 1, 2001, Greece became the 12th country to adopt the euro, trading its drachma for membership in Europe's monetary club. The Greek finance minister called it placing Greece firmly at the heart of Europe. Within 8 years, that heart would nearly stop beating. Here's what happened. Greece manipulated its deficit numbers to qualify. The Maastricht Treaty required deficits below 3% of GDP. Greece reported 1.5%. The real number, 3.7%, and debt. The treaty demanded below 60% of GDP. Greece reported 103%. They lied their way into the Eurozone, but here's the trap nobody explains. When Greece adopted the euro, something critical changed. Before 2001, Greek bonds yielded 24% to risky. After adoption, 6%, the same as Germany. Suddenly, Greece could borrow unlimited money at German interest rates. Why? Because investors assumed the euro meant European Central Bank protection. If Greece borrowed too much, surely Germany would bail them out. Moral hazard at continental scale. From 2001 to 2008, Greece binged. Public sector wages increased. Government spending exploded. The country hosted the 2004 Olympics at a cost exceeding €9 billion, all financed with cheap euro-denominated debt. But here's what the euro truly meant for Greece. They lost the escape valve. Before the euro, when Greece overspent, the drachma would depreciate. Exports would become cheaper. Tourism would boom. The economy self-corrected with the euro. No depreciation possible, no monetary policy, no escape. Fast forward to 2009, the global financial crisis hits. Greek tax revenues collapse. Suddenly, the country needs to roll over debt at 15.4% of GDP annual deficits, but now bond markets panic. Greek yields spike from 6% to 30%. The country faces bankruptcy. Greece's only option, austerity. Crushing, grinding, society-destroying austerity. Cut pensions by 40%, slash public wages by 30%, fire 150,000 public sector workers, raise taxes while unemployment hits 28%. Why? Because Greece couldn't print drachmas to inflate away debt. They were trapped in the euro. The pattern is simple. Join the eurozone, borrow cheap, lose monetary sovereignty, face crisis, endure austerity, repeat. Now let's follow that pattern to Croatia. Different year, same trap. Croatia spent 2010 to 2020 preparing for euro adoption. The government sold it as economic salvation. Eliminate currency risk, lower borrowing costs, full European integration. January 1, 2023, Croatia adopts the euro at a conversion rate of 7.53450 kuna per euro. Overnight, the country's 3.8 million citizens lost monetary sovereignty. The Croatian National Bank celebrated, the European Commission celebrated, and for about 6 weeks, everything seemed fine. Then the mechanism activated. Here's how the euro trap works in real time. First rounding. A coffee that cost 10 kuna €1.33 suddenly costs €1.50. Businesses round up for convenience. Multiply that across every price in the economy. The Croatian Consumer Protection Association reported unusual price surges within 2 weeks. Second, competitive disadvantage. Croatia can no longer devalue its currency to boost exports or tourism. Prices rise, but Croatian wages don't rise proportionally. The country becomes more expensive relative to non-euro neighbors like Serbia or Albania. Third, debt lock-in. Any Croatian business or household with euro-denominated debt is now trapped. If the economy weakens, they can't benefit from currency depreciation, reducing real debt burdens. The debt stays fixed in euros while income falls in real terms. Fourth, monetary policy mismatch. The European Central Bank sets interest rates for Germany and France, not Croatia. When inflation hit 12.7% in Croatia in late 2022, the ECB's policy aimed at Eurozone average of 8.4%. Croatia needed higher rates to cool inflation. They got average rates. Inflation persisted longer. Fifth, the wage price spiral. Croatian wages increased nominally. Minimum wage rose from €677 in 2023 to €750 by 2025. But food prices increased 18% in 2023 alone. Real purchasing power declined. Workers demanded higher wages. Businesses raised prices. The spiral continued. Who controls this game? Frankfurt. The European Central Bank, not Zagreb. The ECB's mandate. Price stability across the entire Eurozone. Not Croatian living standards, not Croatian employment, Eurozone-wide inflation targets. Here's the consequence. Croatia experienced consumer price increases of 0.4 percentage points directly attributable to euro adoption in January 2023 alone. Extrapolate across the year, roughly 5% additional inflation from the currency switch itself. For a median Croatian household earning €1,315 monthly, that 5% means €66 in lost purchasing power every month, €792 annually. That's 2 weeks of groceries gone. Multiply that by 1.4 million Croatian households, €1.1 billion in purchasing power extracted from the Croatian economy in year 1. Not accidental. Structural. This isn't theory. This is pattern. Let's examine the historical proofs. Proof 1. Greece, 2010 to 2015. When Greece's debt crisis exploded in 2010, the country faced a choice: default and potentially exit the euro, or accept a bailout with conditions. They chose the bailout. 3 of them, actually. Euro 289 billion total, the largest bailout in economic history. The conditions: austerity that would make Victorian workhouses look generous. Cut the minimum wage by 22%. Reduce pensions by 40%. Fire 150,000 public sector workers. Raise the retirement age/healthcare spending by 30%. The result: Greek GDP contracted by 25% between 2010 and 2016. Youth unemployment hit 60%. Suicide rates increased 37%. 1/3 of the population fell into poverty. Why couldn't Greece just print drachmas and inflate away the debt? Because they were trapped in the euro. Proof to Ireland, 2008 to 2013. Ireland's story is different but equally damning. In 2008, Irish banks faced collapse from real estate speculation. The government, to preserve confidence in the euro system, guaranteed all bank deposits and debts. Cost: €64 billion, 40% of Ireland's GDP. The country went from budget surplus to massive deficit overnight, not from government overspending but from rescuing private banks to protect the euro system. Ireland accepted an €85 billion bailout in 2010. The conditions included austerity measures that pushed unemployment to 15%. Average wages fell 15% in real terms. Emigration surged as 300,000 Irish citizens, mostly young, left the country. Why couldn't Ireland let its currency depreciate to ease adjustment? Because they were trapped in the euro. Proof 3. Spain, 2008 to 2014. Spain's crisis stemmed from a housing bubble that burst in 2008. Property prices fell 30%. Construction, which had been 16% of Spanish GDP, collapsed. Unemployment hit 27%. Youth unemployment reached 56%. Spain needed expansionary monetary policy, lower interest rates, quantitative easing aimed at Spanish conditions. Instead, they got European Central Bank policy designed for German fears of inflation. The Spanish government cut spending by 15% of GDP. Public sector wages fell 20%. Healthcare and education spending declined sharply. The result: a lost decade. GDP per capita in 2018 was still below 2008 levels. Why couldn't Spain devalue to boost exports and tourism? Because they were trapped in the euro. Do you see the pattern? Different countries, different crises, same mechanism, same trap. Sound familiar? It should. Croatia isn't following a new path. They're walking a trail marked by decades of peripheral eurozone suffering. Here's the truth: they won't tell you on CNBC or in Brussels. The euro wasn't designed for prosperity. It was designed for control. The European Central Bank's mandate isn't Croatian living standards, it's maintaining the eurozone structure. The difference matters profoundly. When Croatia faces economic shocks, a tourism collapse or energy crisis, the country needs specific monetary response. Lower interest rates for Croatia specifically. Quantitative easing targeted at Croatian conditions. Currency flexibility to maintain competitiveness. What Croatia gets instead: one-size-fits-all policy designed for the Eurozone average, which means policy designed primarily for Germany and France, the Eurozone's 2 largest economies accounting for 50% of Eurozone GDP. Croatia represents 0.5% of Eurozone GDP. Your economic needs don't matter at that scale. Here's the mechanism in practice. Imagine Croatian tourism collapses: pandemic, war, energy, crisis, pick your shock. Croatian GDP contracts, tax revenues fall. The government needs to borrow to maintain services. But without monetary sovereignty, Croatia can't lower interest rates or monetize any debt. They must borrow from bond markets at whatever rate markets demand. If markets panic as they did with Greece, Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, borrowing costs spike. Suddenly Croatia faces a debt crisis that's actually a monetary policy crisis. The solution offered austerity, cut spending, raise taxes, shrink the economy to prove fiscal responsibility. But here's the trap. Austerity shrinks GDP, which increases the debt-to-GDP ratio, which spooks markets further, which raises borrowing costs more, which requires more austerity. It's a death spiral. Greece's debt-to-GDP ratio in 2009, 126%. After 5 years of harsh austerity, 180%. The medicine killed the patient. Could Greece have escaped? Yes, by leaving the euro, restoring the drachma, and inflating away domestic currency debt while devaluing to boost exports. Painful, yes, but self-determined pain with a path to recovery. Instead, Greece endured externally imposed suffering with no end date and no recovery path. Austerity became permanent. A generation lost, society fractured. Croatia now walks that same path. When the next crisis hits, and it will hit, crises always do, Croatia will discover what periphery Eurozone membership truly means. You're a province, not a partner. Your sovereignty was exchanged for stability that evaporates when you need it most. The uncomfortable truth. The euro is a political project dressed in economic language. European integration through monetary union. Noble goal, perhaps, but the mechanism transfers wealth and power from periphery to core. From small economies to large. From democratic national control to unelected technocratic management. Croatia's currency sovereignty, gone, in exchange for what? The privilege of using the same money as Germany. Was the trade worth it? Ask the Greeks. So what do you do with this knowledge? First, understand the game. The euro isn't a neutral currency. It's a transfer mechanism. When small economies adopt it, purchasing power flows from periphery to core. This isn't conspiracy, it's structure. The European Central Bank optimizes for German and French economic conditions. Your Croatian wage buys less. Their purchasing power increases. Not by design in the malicious sense, but by design in the architectural sense. The system works as built. Second, watch the patterns. When Croatia's next crisis hits, you'll hear familiar rhetoric. Fiscal responsibility, living within our means. Structural reforms, translated, austerity. They'll demand cuts to pensions, public wages, healthcare, education. They'll call it necessary medicine. What they won't mention, the euro structure makes the crisis worse and prevents the obvious solutions. Third, recognize the historical precedent. Every periphery Eurozone nation that faced crisis chose austerity over exit. Everyone suffered a lost decade or worse. Greece, 25% GDP contraction. Ireland, 300,000 emigrants. Spain, 27% unemployment. Portugal, economic stagnation. The pattern is perfect. The outcomes are known. Croatia's future is visible in others' past. Fourth, understand your leverage or lack thereof. Croatian voters can elect different governments. Those governments can implement different fiscal policies within narrow constraints, but they cannot implement different monetary policies. They cannot devalue, they cannot lower interest rates specifically for Croatian conditions. That power resides in Frankfurt. Croatian democracy now operates within boundaries drawn by the ECB. Fifth, prepare accordingly. If you're Croatian, understand that real wages will likely stagnate or decline relative to core Eurozone nations. The purchasing power loss isn't temporary. It's structural. Plan finances conservatively. Diversify income sources. Consider whether your economic future lies in Croatia or elsewhere. Brain drain isn't accidental. It's rational response to structural disadvantage. The harsh truth. The euro may have made travel easier, but it made economic sovereignty impossible. You traded democratic control for currency convenience. Future generations will pay that price. Knowledge is power. But in monetary unions, knowledge without sovereignty is merely the power to understand your constraints. The euro experiment promised prosperity through integration. What it delivered to peripheral nations was prosperity transferred through integration. Croatia's story isn't over. The full consequences of 2023's currency adoption will unfold across decades, but the pattern is known. The mechanism is documented. The outcomes are predictable. If this analysis gave you a different perspective on monetary unions, on sovereignty, on the real costs of European integration, click subscribe. Understanding how financial systems truly work is the first step toward navigating them successfully. As Benjamin Franklin said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest, especially when that knowledge reveals the interest rates working against you.